Echoes of eras. The civilization older than Egypt, the mystery of Göbekli Tepe. 12,000 years ago, a span of time so vast it eclipses recorded history. Before the first pharaohs ruled the Nile, before the concept of metal was conceived, before a single symbol was scratched onto clay or papyrus, a society of people we cannot name achieved the impossible. On a wind-swept plateau in the heart of the Fertile Crescent, they erected a complex of staggering scale and sophistication, Göbekli Tepe. Gigantic T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in precise concentric circles, carved with an artist's hand and an engineer's mind. This was not a village, not a settlement, but a sanctuary. It stands as a profound anomaly in human history, a monument that should not exist according to our traditional timelines, defying the very foundations of what we thought we knew about our Neolithic ancestors. Southeastern Turkey. For centuries, the local Kurdish inhabitants knew the place as Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill. It was a barren, unassuming rise in the landscape, where generations of farmers occasionally hit large worked stones with their plows, dismissing them as Byzantine-era grave markers or other medieval clutter. The hill had been noted in a cursory American archaeological survey in the 1960s, but was deemed insignificant, a ruined medieval cemetery. The truth was waiting just beneath the surface. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who had been working at a nearby site, revisited the survey reports. The description of the hill and the flint chips littering its surface sparked his curiosity. He went to see for himself. The moment he stood on that hill, brushing the dust from a partially exposed block of finely worked limestone, he knew. He later said, "As soon as I got there and saw the stones, I knew I had two choices: go away and tell nobody, or spend the rest of my life working here." He had found something that would consume him and revolutionize prehistory. Schmidt's team began their meticulous excavation. What they slowly unveiled sent shockwaves through the world of archaeology. They uncovered not just a few standing stones, but multiple, distinct enclosures, each defined by a ring of massive T-shaped monoliths. These pillars were not merely placed on the ground, they were anchored directly into the bedrock, set into sockets painstakingly carved from the living limestone floor. Each pillar was a masterpiece of quarrying and transport, weighing up to 20 tons and standing over 16 feet tall. But it was the artistry that truly stunned the world. The surfaces of these monoliths were alive with a breathtaking menagerie of bas-reliefs, graceful foxes, slithering snakes, menacing scorpions, powerful wild boars, and elegant water birds. This was not crude, primitive scratching. This was sophisticated, symbolic art. The central pillars in each enclosure were even larger, often featuring carved arms, hands, and loincloths, suggesting stylized human forms, perhaps gods, ancestors, or powerful supernatural beings. Then came the radiocarbon dates, charred organic material found in the soil layers associated with the construction consistently pointed to a date of approximately 9600 BC. The scale of this date is difficult to comprehend. This was 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza was built. It was 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It predated the invention of writing by about 8,500 years and the use of metal tools by even longer. This structure was erected at the very dawn of the Neolithic era, a time when humanity was supposed to be comprised of small nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers focused solely on day-to-day survival. The existence of Göbekli Tepe shattered that simplistic narrative. History, as written in our textbooks, was not just incomplete, it was fundamentally wrong. The orthodox model of human cultural evolution was clear and linear. First, humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers. Then, around 10,000 years ago, they discovered agriculture, which allowed them to settle down in permanent villages. This sedentary lifestyle, with its food surpluses and higher population densities, eventually led to social stratification, specialized crafts, and the complex belief systems that produced monumental architecture and organized religion. Göbekli Tepe turned this sequence on its head. Here was the world's most monumental and sophisticated architecture created by people who showed no signs of agriculture or permanent settlement. There were no houses, no hearths for daily cooking, no trash pits, no evidence of domesticated plants or animals at the site's earliest levels. This was a ritual center built before the village. It forced a radical new hypothesis. Perhaps it was the urge to come together to build and maintain this sacred site that spurred the development of agriculture. To feed the hundreds of people required to quarry, carve, and erect these pillars, the hunter-gatherers may have been compelled to cultivate wild grasses and manage wild animal herds, setting humanity on the path to farming. At Göbekli Tepe, belief may have built civilization. As the excavations deepened, the sheer scale of the undertaking became apparent. The hill was not a natural formation. It was an artificial tell, a mountain of man built up over centuries of construction, use, and intentional burial. Multiple enclosures, labeled by archaeologists as Enclosure A, B, C, D, and so on, were discovered, each with its own unique character, but sharing the same underlying architectural template. The geometry was deliberate and sophisticated. The rings were near-perfect circles, with the two central pillars often aligned along a north-south axis. The number of pillars in the surrounding circles often related to significant numbers, perhaps reflecting an early understanding of calendrical cycles. As the team dug down, they made another startling discovery. The older layers contained structures that were even more refined and skillfully executed than the ones above. Time at Göbekli Tepe seemed to run backwards, with the pinnacle of achievement lying in the deepest, oldest strata. The logistical challenge of building Göbekli Tepe is almost incomprehensible. The builders worked with flint and obsidian tools. Limestone, while relatively soft when first quarried, hardens upon exposure to air. The builders had to know their material intimately. The quarries were located on the plateau itself, just a few hundred meters from the enclosures. Here, they expertly extracted the massive blocks from the bedrock, using stone mauls and levers. How did they move a 20-ton pillar? Without wheels or domesticated animals, the only solution was human muscle. The most plausible theory involves teams of hundreds of people, using ropes made of twisted plant fibers, wooden sledges, and a system of log rollers, hauling the monoliths across the landscape in a coordinated, monumental effort. This speaks to a highly organized society, with leaders, planners, and skilled artisans, a level of social complexity never before attributed to Paleolithic peoples. The carvings at Göbekli Tepe are a language in stone, a code we are still struggling to decipher. The animals are not just random depictions of the local fauna.
They are charged with symbolism. The fox, a recurring motif, is often shown as lean, cunning, and agile. It may have represented a guide to the underworld or a trickster deity. Vultures, prominently featured, are creatures that transcend the earth and the sky, often associated with death and the cleansing of flesh, perhaps part of a sky burial ritual. The snakes, with their ability to shed their skin, could have symbolized regeneration and rebirth. Abstract symbols are everywhere: H's, U's, crescents, and discs. The most famous of these carved pillars is the vulture stone, Pillar 43, a dense tapestry of symbolism. It depicts a large vulture alongside a smaller, headless human figure. Below them are a scorpion and a series of abstract shapes that, in a groundbreaking 2017 study, researchers from the University of Edinburgh argued represented constellations. They posited that the stone commemorates a specific date, around 10,950 BC, marking a catastrophic event, a comet impact, that triggered the Younger Dryas, a sudden 1,000-year return to Ice Age conditions. If correct, this would mean Göbekli Tepe was not only a temple, but also the world's oldest known observatory, preserving a warning from a cataclysmic event in deep prehistory. This theory connects Göbekli Tepe to global flood and catastrophe myths. The Younger Dryas period was a time of immense climatic upheaval. As the world was warming at the end of the last ice age, this event plunged it back into cold. Glaciers advanced, weather patterns shifted violently, and sea levels rose dramatically. The collective memory of this worldwide trauma, it is argued, could have been passed down through generations, eventually becoming the stories of a great flood found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Bible, and countless other cultural traditions. Göbekli Tepe, built just after this period, could be the physical manifestation of that memory, a monument constructed by survivors to ensure their story and their warning would never be forgotten. The purpose of the site remains a subject of intense debate. Klaus Schmidt firmly believed it was the world's first temple, a central pilgrimage site for hunter-gatherer groups across a wide region. The evidence of massive feasts, the bones of tens of thousands of butchered gazelle, aurochs, and wild sheep supports this. It was a place of ritual and community, where knowledge was exchanged, marriages arranged, and alliances forged. This gathering of people, united by a common belief system, may have been the catalyst for the domestication of plants and animals, as the need to feed a large temporary population outstripped the capacity of the wild environment. However, not all scholars agree. The mainstream archaeological community, while acknowledging the site's revolutionary importance, often resists the more speculative interpretations. They argue that it was built by complex hunter-gatherers, not a lost civilization, and that the transition to agriculture was a more gradual process. On the other hand, alternative historians like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson see Göbekli Tepe as the smoking gun for a sophisticated, pre-existing civilization that was largely wiped out in the cataclysms of the Younger Dryas. They argue that the site's advanced knowledge of astronomy, masonry, and social organization is a legacy of this lost world, a fragment of a forgotten chapter in human history. The debate is passionate, pitting established paradigms against radical new possibilities. The stones themselves take no sides. They simply wait. Then, around 8000 BC, something equally mysterious happened. After nearly 2 millennia of use, Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned to the elements. It was not destroyed by war or a natural disaster. It was deliberately, carefully and completely buried. Every enclosure, every pillar, every carving was filled in with tons of earth, stone, and debris collected from the surrounding area. This was not a haphazard act. It was a systematic, labor-intensive process. The fill material is clean, containing almost no cultural artifacts, suggesting it was brought in specifically for this purpose. Why? Why would a people who invested so much labor, so much spiritual and cultural capital into this sacred place, choose to entomb it?
The theories are as fascinating as the act itself. Perhaps it was a ritual decommissioning. The belief system that built Göbekli Tepe may have been evolving, and the old symbols and enclosures needed to be retired with respect, sealed away from the profane world. Perhaps it was an act of preservation. If the builders possessed knowledge of a cyclical catastrophe, as the vulture stone might suggest, they could have buried their greatest achievement to protect it from a disaster they knew would come again. Or perhaps it was simply time to move on. The world was changing, agriculture was taking hold, and the old ways of the hunter-gatherer were fading. Burying the temple could have been a way to honor the past while making way for the future. Whatever the reason, the burial worked perfectly. For 10,000 years, Göbekli Tepe slept peacefully, hidden from sight, its secret kept safe while empires rose and fell on the land above it. The legacy of Göbekli Tepe is only just beginning to be understood. Klaus Schmidt, the visionary who uncovered it, tragically passed away in 2014, but his work continues. Today, only about 5% of the site has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed at least 20 more circular enclosures still hidden beneath the hill, promising even older and potentially more revolutionary discoveries. Each new season of digging has the potential to rewrite our story once more. Göbekli Tepe forces us to look at our past with humility and wonder. It tells us that the human drive to create, to symbolize, to understand our place in the cosmos is far older and more profound than we ever imagined. The people who built it were not primitive savages. They were astronomers, engineers, and artists. They carved the blueprint of belief itself into the limestone of Anatolia. They proved that civilization is not merely a product of surplus grain and settled life, but of a shared idea, a collective dream. That dream, to build something that transcends the individual, that speaks across the millennia, is a fire that was lit at the dawn of our time, and it is a fire that continues to burn within us. We stand today looking back across 12,000 years at the silent, imposing pillars of Göbekli Tepe. They are a message from a world we have forgotten. They whisper that our history is deeper, richer, and far more mysterious than our records show. They ask us not just who we are, but who we were. And as we continue to dig, both in the earth and in our own understanding, we may yet find that the answers have been waiting for us all along, buried beneath the dust of ages, on a potbelly hill in Turkey. Göbekli Tepe shouldn't exist. And yet, it does. Proof that the story of civilization is far older and far stranger than we ever imagined. What else lies buried beneath our feet? Subscribe to Echoes of Eras, and together we'll uncover the forgotten world that came before history.